Hey guys, tonight we step barefoot into warm Nubian sand, under a sky the color of bruised mangoes. The wind is low, thick with smoke and myrrh. Somewhere behind you, a drum taps a steady heartbeat, soft, intimate, like a whisper against the back of your neck. There's laughter too, low, liquid, a few meters away. Someone pours golden beer into a clay bowl so wide it takes two lovers to hold. You catch the scent before you even know it's there. Nutty, fermented, spiced with crushed dates and something sharper, like crushed acacia bark. You shouldn't drink it. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop your location and local time in the comments. I want to know exactly what corner of the world you're lying in, while we slip back through time. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You arrive as the sun folds itself over the horizon, like some lazy cat curling into a grain sack. In the dying light, Nubia shimmers like a hallucination, honey-colored cliffs, rust-red villages, and the Nile winding through it all like a wet, ancient ribbon. You're not a tourist. You've lived here all your life. You just forgot for a few thousand years. Tonight is not an ordinary night. Tonight is beer night. Not your average bar crawl either. No, this is the one night where fermentation meets flirtation. Where love is tested not by heartbeats, but by hops. Well, sort of. You're in the heart of what scholars call the Kerma culture, though no one around here calls it that. They call it home, or more accurately, they grunt, nod, and offer you a bowl of beer brewed in a pot so old it has its own personality. You step into the central village, where women stir mash over fire pits, their hands stained with barley and magic. There's a priestess here, older than sense, who hums love spells into the foam as it rises. Her name changes depending on who you ask. Some call her the Mouth of Hathor, others the Brew Witch. You just call her Ma'am because she once cursed a man into permanent celibacy for making fun of her millet. She passes by now, trailing a cloud of myrrh, her copper bangles clinking like a tambourine. Her gaze slides over you like oil, and you know instantly you are not special. You are bait, maybe, for something much bigger. Nearby, young men glossy-skinned, chest-oiled and glittering practice seduction poems. They stammer and sweat, because this is how you prove readiness. You don't just look pretty, you sing, you dance. You out-metaphor the next guy. One poor soul tries to compare his lovers. Lips to gazelle hooves, and is laughed out of the yard. His beer is taken from him. It's brutal and hilarious. A few meters away, women grind herbs into the beer aphrodisiacs, allegedly. Historians still argue whether those roots actually worked, or if placebo was just that powerful. But in Nubia, the line between science and spell is thin, almost erotic. You sip from a bowl past your way and taste honey, cinnamon, maybe hibiscus, or is it fig? You're not sure. You're already dizzy. That was fast. But the magic of this beer isn't just taste, it's ritual. It's emotional choreography. Think. Flirting meets choreography meets herbal pharmacology. You're watching a girl, maybe 16, smear ochre on her cheeks while whispering a love chant that supposedly originated from a goddess's breakup letter. She's nervous, her hands shake. But when she locks eyes with the boy across the fire, it doesn't matter. Her voice steadies. He looks like he might cry, or bolt, or both. You sidle closer to the brew pot, now bubbling like some mythic cauldron. The women are adding what looks suspiciously like pomegranate rind. And wait, is that crocodile dung? You blink. No one stops them. Okay then, welcome to ancient birth control. That's not a joke, it's real. In fact, Sex with Kings details how ancient lovers relied on recipes like this. Dangerous, dubious, and deeply committed to keeping things spicy and consequence-free. Whether it worked, Debatable. Whether people swore by it. Unquestionable. There's an elder nearby with gold rings stacked to her elbows, who swears she seduced 3 husbands with nothing but beer foam and her left eyebrow. She raises it now, just to demonstrate, and yeah, you kind of get it off to the side. A few unmarried men play a game that involves balancing full bowls on their heads while pelvic thrusting across a sandpit. Why? Because this is Nubia, and testosterone is apparently timeless. One of them slips, spills the beer, and everyone groans like someone just lost a camel. You wander farther from the fire and stumble on something unexpected. An older couple, gray-haired and belly-laughing, sitting on a worn blanket. He pours beer into her cupped hands, and she slaps his wrist, mock-scolding him for using the good stuff. They've been married, you learn, for 40 years. Their wedding beer was brewed by her grandmother. Same recipe, same pot, same blush on her face. Now as he traces her hand with his fingers, slow and tender. The beer here isn't just alcohol. It's memory, it's story, it's foreplay, it's fight resolution. It's everything. You hear singing behind you, no chanting. The priestess has returned, her voice rising, hypnotic, thick with rhythm. And warning, it's a seduction call, yes, but also a caution. Love, she croons, is both feast and famine. And beer? Beer is the tongue it speaks with. That line hits you like a wet sandal to the face. You need to sit. Somewhere near the Nile, a couple disappears into the reeds, their laughter barely louder than the frogs. You're not supposed to follow, so you don't. Not yet. Instead, you turn to your own bowl. The foam settles. Your fingers. Warm against the clay, the air thickens. It's not a party, it's a portal. You're here, you're inside it. And nothing, not even time, can pull you out now. The night deepens, and with it, the beat of the drums grows slower, deeper less. A rhythm now and more a heartbeat you can feel in your sternum. You're standing beneath a fig tree, its shadow long and wavering like a snake stretched thin. And just ahead is the couple you've been quietly trailing. They don't notice you, or maybe they do, and just don't care. This is their moment, and it's thick with old barley smoke and brand new desire. They're dressed up for the occasion in a wrap-dyed indigo with a handprint pattern pressed along the edges. Her in linen so fine, it clings like a second skin when the wind moves. Her hair's plaited with date flowers. His wrist jingles with cowrie shells. This is date night in ancient Nubia. No apps, no chaperones, just beer, bravery, and the open sky. You watch as he approaches the brewing circle like it's a stage, and in some ways, it is. Around him, women and elders pretend not to look, but you can feel their attention like static. He's got one shot at this one poem, one pour, and one offer of fermented affection, and if he blows it, he'll be drinking alone tonight. Which for Nubians is more than embarrassing. It's spiritually suspicious. Being single too long around here gets you side-eyed by the old women who believe in ancestral matchmaking. Too many solo dinners and suddenly you're cursed, haunted, or worse, set up with someone whose beer tastes like bathwater. So he steps forward and begins. His voice cracks at first, but then he finds it, somewhere deep in his diaphragm, and lets it spill out like honey over warm stone. He sings of her eye stars behind reeds, of her laughter bells in the clay pots, of her hips no weight. Even he realizes that line needs editing, but she laughs anyway. He recovers. She takes the offered bowl of beer, lifts it to her lips, without breaking eye contact, and drinks, not a sip. A long, slow draw. The village exclaims, and just like that, they are paired for the night, or the week, or forever. Historians still argue whether these rituals were legally binding marriages or just socially accepted flings. Some say these beer ceremonies were full-on unions, complete with dowries and property exchanges. Others argue it was more like an extended sleepover with symbolic cups and a lot of enthusiastic dancing. The truth? Probably somewhere deliciously in between. You sit beside a grinding stone where an older woman is preparing spices to add to the next batch. She leans close and whispers, "You know beer is the real test. Not love, not looks, not lineage. Can they make a brew that doesn't kill you? That's the one you marry." She's not joking. In a culture without refrigeration, brewing is both chemistry and divination. Too sour, too flat, too bitter, each taste a verdict. There's even a legend about a woman who brewed a love potion so powerful it made her rival's teeth fall out. Whether it was sabotage or sorcery, no one knows. What's clear is that people stopped eating her lentils after that. Beer wasn't just drink, it was declaration. To offer someone a bowl was to say, "Here, have a taste of me. If you like it, maybe you'll stay. And if you didn't, well, the dung contraceptives were always optional." But heartbreak was not that off to your left. A few teenagers experiment with different brewing techniques, overseen by a grandmother who looks like she's carved from sandalwood and sarcasm. One boy adds crushed locust shell, claims it makes the beer more masculine. She spits into the pot and tells him that's the dumbest thing she's heard since someone tried fermenting goat's milk. Still, she lets him continue. After all, bad beer is part of growing up. One of the fringe beliefs in this region is that dreams are affected by the kind of beer you drink. Bitter beer? You'll dream of snakes, sweet beer, of weddings and wildflowers. Spicy beer? Well, those dreams are best not discussed near the priestess. Speaking of which, she reappears now, this time dressed in ceremonial scarlet, her skin glistening with oil, eyes rimmed in crushed malachite. She carries a bowl the size of a small drum, filled to the brim with a brew reserved only for sacred seduction rites. The couple from earlier is ushered forward. They kneel. She chants something about fertility, but the words are old and the dialect older. Then she takes a reed straw, dips it, and offers each of them a sip. Their lips touch the same end, and suddenly you understand the intimacy of it. It's not just kissing with training wheels, it's communion, shared breath, shared future. You blink and realize half the crowd is crying, or pretending not to. Someone hands you a different bowl, this one darker, thicker, more pungent. You taste clove, licorice, the unmistakable zing of fermented garlic. You cough. The brewer laughs. "It's for heartbreak," she says. "Tastes awful, but it cleans the soul." Nearby, an elder tells a story of a pharaoh's concubine who brewed beers so potent it made the king forget his wife's name for a week. She was promoted, obviously. Sex, in the royal court, was both politics and performance, and the beer made it smoother. According to Eleanor Herman in Sex with Kings, even in cultures more rigid than Nubia, aphrodisiac brews played a part in who got what, who stayed where, and who ended up in whose bed. In Nubia, it was less manipulative, more collaborative. The brew was mutual. You made it together. You drank it together. You suffered the consequences together. A woman approaches now, her face painted in dots that mark her as both healer and midwife. She whispers something about the moon's position, then slips away toward the riverbank where couples have begun their slow migration. No one rushes here. Courtship is a slow simmer. You watch the stars multiply above, and each one feels like a silent witness, like maybe they've seen this all before. And they have over and over. Every season, every harvest. Every time someone took a risk and offered a bowl of themselves to someone else, and waited to see what happened next. This is how love worked. Not with grand speeches or candlelit dinners, but with foam, with firelight, with fermentation and faith. You sit very still. The air is warm. Your hands are sticky with barley. Somewhere behind you, the drums shift again. Slower now, as if inviting sleep, but you're not ready yet. The night is just beginning, and there are more bowls to pass, more secrets to sip, more moments to watch unfold under this velvet sky that seems to stretch on forever. There's a Smell in the air now sweet, dark, and just on the edge of something dangerous. It's not the beer anymore, or not just the beer. It's something older, deeper. You follow it instinctively, past the low fire circles and lovers lounging on mats, past the girls dancing barefoot on crushed herbs, and toward a small thatched hut standing alone at the edge of the village, its doorway flickering with candlelight. You pause. The scent sticky honey mixed with something herbal and a trace of sweat pools at the back of your throat. Your feet know what you haven't admitted to your head. This is the brew mistress's house. The one may call she who knows. And you're not supposed to be here. But you step inside anyway. The ceiling is low, heavy with hanging roots and dried flowers. On the floor, a wide clay pot bubbles softly, the contents glowing amber in the firelight. She sits in the center, not looking up, grinding what looks like crushed date pits into a fine powder. Her wrists jingle faintly. Her mouth moves in a whispersome spell, or recipe, or maybe both. And then she looks at you. Her eyes are clouded, not blind, not exactly, but seeing something just beyond what you can. She gestures for you to sit. You do. You don't speak, because she already knows. She reaches for a bowl, dips it, and passes it to you without breaking eye contact. The beer is thick. It smells like sugarcane and smoke. You sip. It's warm and wrong and right all at once. And suddenly, without warning, you remember a lover from years ago who once kissed you with their eyes open, and how it made you feel. Both exposed and chosen, the brew mistress nods. It remembers, she murmurs. Beer always remembers. Then she begins to speak not to you, exactly, but through you. Telling a story of another night, a different village, and a girl who brewed a potion not for seduction, but for survival. Her name was Amani, and she lived 2 rivers south, near where the crocodiles bred in wide muddy nests. She was poor, but her hands knew plants like birds know wind. She made beer for the harvest feast, and she made it with clove, fig, and a root her grandmother swore only flowered during eclipses. She didn't mean to enchant anyone. She was just lonely. But when she offered her bowl to a visiting warrior, big, quiet, eyes like carved basalt, he drank it and did not blink for 3 hours. Later, they lay in the grass behind the hut while fireflies mapped constellations between their ribs. The next morning, he left like all warriors do, but he came back every full moon. For years, no promises, no vows. Just beer and breath, and the kind of love that doesn't need to be named out loud. You blink, and you're back in the hut. The mistress is smiling now, and you realize she's told you a memory, not just a legend. Maybe her own, maybe someone else's. Time doesn't. Run straight in here. Every brew has a purpose, she says. Lust, laughter, grief, revenge. What's yours? You don't answer. She doesn't expect you to. She dips a reed into the pot and draws a symbol on your forehead. It burns just a little. Outside, the drums pick up again, and a new scent rolls in jasmine and charcoal. The smell of things just about to happen. You rise and leave the hut, bowl in hand, head spinning in more ways than one. The village has changed. Or maybe just your eyes have. Couples now sway closer, hips moving like reeds in river wind. Someone plays a stringed instrument low, yearning. Slightly out of tune. It's perfect. You walk past a group of women painting each other's backs with henna. The patterns curl and twist into secret messages, invites, warnings, confessions. One girl's design spirals out from her spine like a sunburst. You hear her giggle and say, "If he can read this, he deserves me." Another woman beside her is older, quieter, painting a symbol that looks like a weeping eye. You don't ask. She doesn't offer dot just beyond the painting circle. 2 boys perform a dance with clay jugs balanced on their shoulders. They move slowly, deliberately, their feet tracing ancient steps meant to mimic courtship rituals of Nile herons. One boy stumbles. The jug falls, breaks, The crowd gasps, but he just laughs, shrugs, and pours the last of his beer into his friend's bowl. That's how you apologize here, with barley, not words. There's a fringe belief whispered among the elders that if two people drink from the same bowl under a crescent moon, they'll dream the same dream. It's not proven, obviously, but there's enough coincidence to keep the superstition alive. One couple you overhear swears they both dreamed of fish turning into birds the night they first shared a brew. They've been together ever since, raising goats and still arguing about the correct way to sweeten beer without it going syrupy. Historians still argue whether these romantic uses of beer in Nubia were religious obligations or just culturally endorsed excuses to get a little closer under the pretext of piety. The truth, again, seems to live somewhere between ceremony and carnality. These people didn't separate love and spirit, or body and brew. Everything was connected. You were what you offered, and what you offered usually was in a bowl steaming, spiced, and deeply personal. You're offered another bowl now. This one's cooler, laced with mint and something that numbs your tongue slightly. You sip. A girl sits beside you. She doesn't speak, just smiles. Her teeth are stained slightly red from berries. Her fingers rest on the rim of your bowl for a moment, and then she leaves. You don't follow. You just hold the warmth of her touch like a secret. From across the fire, someone begins a song, not a chant this time, but a lullaby, almost. It's about two lovers who couldn't be together in life, so they asked the gods to turn them into matching stars. Every year on this night, they're said to draw close in the sky. You look up. Maybe it's true, maybe not. But something above you is shimmering with more urgency than before. You're full now, not just from beer, but from something else. A kind of emotional satiety. The kind that only comes when you realize you've wandered into someone else's sacred night and been allowed to stay. The brewmistress watches from the edge of the firelight, her smile wide and knowing. She raises her bowl to you. You raise yours back. Nothing is said, but everything is understood. Somewhere in the distance, a pot hisses over fire, and the smell of boiling sorghum beer curls through the air like a beckoning finger. It's not the polite kind of scent. It's bold, smoky, pungent, and oddly inviting. Like someone just dared you to taste it and find out what secrets it's been keeping. You're following it now, your feet tracing a path worn by generations of nervous lovers and overly confident poets, past woven baskets, half-emptied bowls, and a drum circle that slowed to a sultry, hypnotic rhythm. You don't realize you've entered the flirtation pit until it's too late to escape. It's not really a pit, it's more of a sand circle, ringed by watching eyes, with torches casting long, twitching shadows across the ground like dancing snakes. Inside the ring, half-dressed suitors stand slick with beer and sweat, their bodies glistening under the firelight, holding clay mugs like weapons, their eyes scanning the crowd for anyone to impress. Welcome to the beer bath and flirt battle. This is no tavern game. This is ritual combat, emotional, poetic, and wildly unregulated. You spot the rules scratched into the sand nearby. Rule 1 must be soaked. Rule 2 must be bold. Rule 3 must be entertaining. Or get off the mat. A girl in red steps into the ring first. Her braids are looped with tiny golden rings that shine softly as she moves. She pours a pitcher of lukewarm beer over her head, lets it drip down her arms, chest, legs. The crowd gasps. She raises her hands and begins to recite a poem so sharp it could slice stone. It's not sweet, it's biting. She compares love to spoiled beer, to cracked pots, to a goat that won't shut up in the night. And somehow, everyone loves her for it. Even the men she's clearly mocking. One steps up to respond, drenched in foam, a flower stuck behind his ear for no apparent reason. He tries charm, talks about her walk being smoother than honey over hot bread. It's not bad, she smirks. He survives another verse. You watch 3 more pairs enter and exit, their performances ranging from steamy to hilarious to accidentally tragic, like the boy who forgets his lines mid-poem and simply sings the ingredients to his grandmother's bread recipe. She's in the crowd, and she bursts into proud tears. He gets a kiss from someone, so maybe it worked. Historians still argue whether these flirtation battles were spontaneous village events or sacred ceremonies, tied to lunar cycles and agricultural calendars. What's certain is that the beer mattered. It wasn't just poured, it was part of the performance. The foam acted as punctuation, the sipping as emphasis. In some duels, participants even took turns drinking from the same bowl mid-poem, daring the other to match their rhythm or one-up their rhyme. You get nudged forward now. Someone behind you chants your name well, not your real one, but the one the villagers gave you earlier. Sticky fingers. Because of that time you tried to take more than your share of honey cakes. Too late to hide. You're in the ring. The crowd hums. You're handed a mug, still warm from the last failed romantic's hands. You look across the circle and see your opponent, a woman wrapped in white linen. Eyes sharp, smile already forming a comeback before you even speak. You take a sip. The beer is strong, with a ginger bite that makes your eyes water slightly. You begin. You don't remember the words. They just come. Something about stars and dust, about the way she walks like a question you haven't solved. Yet, the crowd oohs. She claps. Not mockingly, genuinely impressed. Then it's her turn. She flips it, spins your metaphor into something sultry, and ends her verse with a wink. Game over. You lose. You're glad. She tosses you her mug as a souvenir and saunters off, hips swaying like reeds on riverbanks in a thunderstorm. You retreat from the circle, exhilarated and exhausted, and find yourself sitting beside a jug of half-finished beer, being stirred lazily by a boy no older than 15. He offers you a sip. It's flat, a little too sour, but you nod appreciatively anyway. Still learning, he mutters. Trying to make it like my sister does. She won a marriage with hers. You ask what he means. He shrugs, the man she wanted wouldn't speak to her. So she brewed a batch so good, so perfect, he cried when he tasted it. Then he asked her to be his co-brewer. Not wife, not lover, co-brewer. In this village, that's more intimate than marriage. Brewing together is like dreaming out loud. A shared brew is a shared body, a shared future, a hope fermented into physical form. A small girl scampers past, carrying a bowl twice the size of her head. She's headed toward a couple arguing by the rivers, edged two middle-aged lovers bickering over whether one of them watered down last week's beer. You listen. The fight is ridiculous and real. She accuses him of forgetting the wild mint. He says she didn't grind the barley fine enough. Somewhere between insults, he tells her she still smells like the first batch they ever made together. She swats him, then kisses him, then pours the bowl over both their heads. The girl squeals. The crowd cheers. Apparently, they fight every festival. Apparently, it's foreplay. There's a whisper now, passing through the crowd like wind through tall grass. She's here. You ask who, and someone just points to the main brew tent. Inside, under a canopy strung with dried herbs and glowing embers, sits a woman known only as the judge. She doesn't speak. She doesn't brew. She only tastes once, and then delivers her verdict. Her tongue, they say, is gifted by Hathor herself. She can taste betrayal, infidelity, secrets. She judges not just the beer, but the emotion behind it. Lovers bring her their best batches hoping for a nod, a smile, some sign of approval. The bravest bring brews made together, symbols of union, flavored with shared joy or sometimes mutual regret. Tonight, a young couple approaches her tent, visibly nervous. They met last season during this same ritual, shared a bowl, shared a night, then nothing. Ghosted, as we'd call it. But tonight they're back, together, with a new batch. They kneel, offer it. The judge takes a sip. Her eyes close. Her mouth twists, not in disgust, but in complicated thought. A long silence. Then, finally, she opens her eyes and murmurs. Try again, with more truth. It's not rejection, it's advice. They nod, retreat, hands barely brushing. You leave the tent area with your head full and your stomach warmer than it has any right to be. The night's only deepening, but already your mind is stitched with snapshots painted backs, beer baths, laughing poets, and a woman whose silence cuts sharper than any verse. The flirt battles may be over for now, but the real games have just begun. This night isn't just about who wins and who pairs off. It's about who dares to show themselves, fermented flaws and all, and who's brave enough to sip anyway. The first thing you notice is the silence. It's not actual quiet, more like a heavy pause, the kind that settles just before something sacred happens. You've wandered now toward the village granary, a looming structure woven from reeds and sealed with mud, its rounded belly swollen with the season's harvest. This is the source, the birthplace of all love potions and jealous brews, of aphrodisiac ales and pints of apology. Inside, the air is dusty, sweet, and rich with the scent of barley husks and crushed dates. But tonight, it isn't grain you're here for, it's the strange economy that pulses around it. A woman with arms like tree branches and a headscarf patterned in river glyphs waves you over. She's the granary keeper, and her job is to track every grain in and out, not for profit but for love. People don't pay me in coin, she tells you. They pay me in intention. You don't understand. She gestures toward the side of the hut where small clay tablets rest, each etched with symbols, each a promissory note in the currency of desire. He gives me grain, she says, tapping one, and says it's for a brew to win her back. If she comes back, I get flowers. If not, he owes me double next moon. Her laugh is dry, like sand poured through bone. You realize now that in Nubia, beer wasn't just made, it was negotiated, like a love treaty with frothy signatures. The barley tax, collected monthly, was originally intended to support the temple brewers and the beer offerings for gods. But over time, it became something else. A social system, a romantic dowry, an emotional ledger. People paid in barley, but what they were really buying was a chance sometimes at forgiveness, sometimes at favor, and sometimes just for the courage to speak to someone they thought too beautiful to approach sober. You ask about the tablets. She hands you one. The carving is crude but clear. A jar, a star, and two parallel lines. That means he wants her to know he still dreams about her, she says. But she hasn't come for the brew yet. You imagine this man sitting in some shadowed hut, wondering if the message made it, if the barley he gave was enough, if she even noticed. You place the tablet back, and it suddenly feels heavier than it looks. Outside the granary, a cluster of young women prepare what they call truth brews, experimental blends meant not to seduce, but to reveal. They mash herbs known to lower inhibitions to bring emotion to the surface. One girl, maybe 15, explains that her mother used to say, "Drink this when you want to know who he really is when the mask slips." These brews aren't meant for celebration. They're poured at crossroads, before breakups, after betrayals, before someone decides whether to stay or finally go. You sip one and instantly feel your chest unclench, like some tight string inside you just got cut. You think of someone you left behind long ago, someone who smiled like a secret, but never told you what the joke was. The memory stings in the best way. Just then, a commotion. You follow it to the central fire circle where a boy is on his knees, holding up a jug with shaking hands. Before him stands a girl with her arms crossed, her brow set in stone. The crowd knows this scene. It's a barley debt gone romantic, a man who didn't pay his love tax and is now trying to make amends with an emergency brew. She takes the jug, smells it, doesn't drink. Instead, she passes it to an elder who tastes it, nods, then gives it back. The girl finally sips, a pause. Then, she throws the rest on his head and walks away. The crowd erupts. Some laugh, some sigh. The boy just wipes his face and mutters, "Too much tamarind," and honestly, he might be right. Historians still argue whether these tax systems were real economic models or romanticized folklore designed to give structure to relationships that otherwise defied definition. But the records don't lie stone tablets from Nubian granaries. Mention exact grain quantities exchanged not just for beer, but for domestic harmony, festive union, and in one case, to stop her from going back to that merchant with the better eyebrows. Beer, in this world, was a contract, not just liquid, but a symbol of intent, like buying someone flowers made from fermented commitment. You wander to the edge of the market square, where older couples are selling leftover ingredients dried. Herbs, sweet roots, faded spices. A man hands you a pouch of something that smells like licorice and firewood. "For balance," he says. "Put it in the pot only when you don't know what you want." His wife nudges him and adds, "Or who?" You laugh, but the pouch feels sacred in your pocket. Behind them, a mural on the granary wall catches your eye. It shows a woman and a man holding a massive bowl between them, their hands not touching, but close. Around them, barley stalks bend toward the center as if drawn to the union. Below the image, 3 symbols are painted: fire, water, and a heart split down the middle. The original brew trio, a passing girl explains. Heat, patience, and risk. You think about that. How each brew needs fire to start, water to carry it, and the gamble that it will turn out the way you hope. Love's recipe isn't so different. You return to the main circle as dusk begins to kiss the edges of night. The granary fades into silhouette. People begin lighting smaller fires now, more private duo fires, you might say. Each pair sitting close, whispering over bowls, some arguing, some laughing. One couple sits in total silence, staring into the coals as if reading their future there. The air smells of caramelized sugar, of burnt spices, of dreams boiled just a little too long. You sit, watch, sip. Around you, the barley taxes have turned into songs, the brewing ledgers into love letters, and every failed batch into a lesson with a smoky aftertaste. Nubia doesn't separate commerce from emotion. Here, even your taxes have feelings, and love? Love is something you ferment, filter, and drink together. You don't need to see the fire to know it's there. You can feel it on your cheeks, warm and pulsing like breath. The air smells different now, charged with a heady mix of singed cedar, hot resin, and that unmistakable, almost sticky sweetness of beer being warmed too close to flame. You're approaching the sacred bonfire, the heart of the festival of fire. And even before you step into its glow, you hear the sounds bells on ankles, chants rising and falling like ocean waves, and laughter sharp as a spark. This is the place where desire becomes ritual, where flirtation becomes theater, and beer becomes something almost divine. You push through a curtain of smoke, and the crowd opens like a story mid-sentence. A wide ring of fire circles a flat stage of compacted earth, and dancers move like smoke itself, oiled, glowing in the light, their arms slicing the air, their hips spelling verses the mouth can't say. They're reenacting one of the oldest Nubian myths, when the goddess of pleasure stole fire from the gods to warm her lover's bath, then brewed the first love beer over its flames. A story with no beginning and no ending, only movement and memory. You can't tell where the myth stops and the real seduction begins. Couples pair off around the fire's edge, exchanging bowls, their fingers brushing in that way that says far more than a poem ever could. The beer tonight is different, infused, spiked with cinnamon bark and soaked wildflowers. It smells like risk. You sip. It tastes like the first time someone said your name slowly, deliberately, like it meant something. A girl in blue catches your eye and holds it, then turns away laughing. She's part of a group weaving in and out of the firelight, offering tastings, tiny bowls of different brews, each supposedly keyed to an emotion. There's one for yearning, one for courage, one for forgetting. She gives you the courage one. You drink. It burns. She winks. In a corner of the fire circle. An old man drums with his palms flat and slow, his eyes closed, head tilted as if listening for something buried beneath the beat. Around him, the dancers begin a new rhythm, faster, wilder. A man and woman spin toward the center. He holds a jug high above his head. She moves under it, never spilling a drop. It's a dance of balance, of trust, of showing off without trying. Too hard. She fakes a fall, and he catches her, not with his hands, but with the edge of his knee, letting her roll over it and land laughing in the sand. The crowd erupts. They bow. Someone hands them matching bowls. They drink at once. And just like that, they vanish into the blur of dancers again. You ask someone nearby if they're a couple. The woman shrugs. Tonight, yes. Maybe tomorrow. 2, maybe not. What matters is the pour was equal. You're still thinking about that when a young man beside you, his face streaked with paint, his necklace made of carved seeds, starts composing a spontaneous poem about the girl he's hoping will notice him tonight. It's not great. It rhymes love with shove and above. But the crowd claps anyway, and when the girl he mentions looks up, you swear her cheeks go pink. Beer loosens the tongue, but fire loosens the truth. You circle the fire and nearly trip over a woven mat where a group of elders sit passing around a single enormous bowl. They're sipping in silence, heads nodding to the beat. You're about to apologize when one beckons you over. Sit, she says, patting the ground beside her. You do. The bowl comes to you. It's darker than any brew you've tasted tonight. Nearly black, thick as syrup. You sip. It tastes like stories you haven't heard yet. This is ancestor beer, she says. We drink it so they remember we remember them. You look into the bowl and swear, just for a second, that you see. Faces ripple in the foam. She nods. They drank like us, danced like us, fell in and out of love. We honor them by doing the same. There's a comfort in that, knowing that every awkward flirtation, every bowl shared or rejected, every drunken confession is part of a longer lineage of people trying to get it right. Or at least interesting. Behind you, someone begins the firewalk. It's less about heat and more about intention. The tradition goes, if you've brewed a beer for someone, but haven't yet had the courage to offer it, you walk the fire path barefoot, bowl in hand. If the person steps forward and drinks with you at the other end, your bond is sealed for a season. If not, well, you drink alone, and no one shames you for it. You watch now as a young woman, shaking but determined, steps onto the glowing coals. Her bowl doesn't even quiver. She walks slowly, lips pressed tight, eyes focused on one man standing across the flames. He doesn't move. For a second, your heart sinks with hers. But then he steps forward, just one step, and then another. He meets her at the end, takes the bowl, drinks. The crowd erupts in song. Historians still argue whether these festivals were purely social events or if they carried legal weight in romantic bonds. Some claim these pairings were as official as marriage. Others argue they were ritualized, play serious in the moment, but dissolving with sunrise. But one thing is agreed upon: fire and beer were central. Together they symbolized transformation, raw grain becoming brew, raw emotion becoming connection. You wander from the fire for a moment to collect yourself. The energy is intoxicating. Even the earth beneath your feet feels like it's humming. You sip from your bowl, one you don't remember accepting, but somehow fits perfectly in your hands, and let the rhythm of the festival wrap around you like a soft net. You pass a couple leaning forehead to forehead, their beer untouched between them, as if the ritual worked too well, and now they're afraid of breaking the spell. Another pair sits shoulder to shoulder, talking softly. passing their bowl back and forth with the easy rhythm of people who've done this a dozen times before and still find it exciting. Near the edge of the gathering, you spot a child crouched near a cooling ember pit, drawing symbols in the ash with a stick. "What are you writing?" you ask. She grins. "A recipe," she says, "for my future husband. It has honey, ginger, and 3 secrets I'm not telling yet." You smile, sip again, and realize that's exactly what tonight is, a recipe. Not just for love, but for the memory of it, preserved in smoke and barley and whispers shared by firelight. You head back toward the circle as the dancers spin faster, the chants rise, and the flames crackle loud enough to drown doubt. There's still more to see, still more to taste. And someone somewhere in this wild swirl of sparks and laughter just might be waiting to offer you a sip. There's a shift in the air, thicker now, quieter, as if even the fire has drawn a breath and decided to watch what happens next. You follow the curve of a low wall made of sun-baked mud brick and find yourself beneath a hanging veil of woven reeds, dripping with dew. Beyond it, the glow softens. The sounds mute. This is not the place for drumming or dancing. This is where secrets ferment. You step into the cool space and instantly feel like you've crossed into someone's memory. There's a mat on the ground, 2 bowls placed carefully side by side, and above them, a bundle of herbs hanging upside down, the leaves slowly wilting in the heat. A man sits cross-legged, oil shining on his shoulders, tracing his finger around the rim of one bowl. Beside him, a woman braids her hair, not looking at him. You don't need anyone to explain. You know exactly what's happening. This is the morning after room. Not necessarily post-sex, but post-something. Post-decision, post-offer, post-regret. Maybe, or post-ecstasy. And then, through the silence, the woman reaches into a small basket and pulls out a lump of something brown, grainy, and suspiciously pungent. She kneads it in her palm like dough, then adds it to one of the bowls. The man sniffs the air, blinks, winces. You realize what it is before he says it. Crocodile dung. An ancient contraceptive. You've heard of it, but seeing it wet and steaming, casually stirred into the love brew, like a spoonful of honey, is another thing entirely. You watch as she lifts the bowl, sips, and then hands it to him. He hesitates. She raises an eyebrow. He drinks. The moment is weirdly tender. They're not just preventing a child. They're acknowledging that what they shared last night wasn't an accident, but neither is it necessarily forever. It's a pause button wrapped in ritual. A choice soaked in barley. Historians still argue whether this method actually worked. Some claim the dung created a hostile environment for sperm. Others argue it was a psychological comfort, a way for women to assert control in a culture that on the surface seems male-dominated. As you've seen, is quietly ruled by the women who know when to pour and when to withhold. The debate continues, but here, in this reed-walled nook, there's no question. She decided. He accepted. That's all there is. You sit quietly on the edge of the mat, unnoticed, and watch them finish the bowl in silence. Then they lean against each other, not romantically, not even affectionately, just evenly. Like 2 people sharing the same fatigue, the same weight, the same unspoken questions about what happens after the sun returns. They don't look at each other again. They don't need to. You leave the hut, the smell of dung and date beer still clinging faintly to your clothes, and re-enter the world of torchlight and flirtation. But everything feels different now. You've seen the underside of the ritual, the part no one performs in front of the fire, the reality behind the rhythm. You wander toward a quieter fire, smaller, where a group of women sit in a circle peeling something that looks like red bark into thin strips and dropping them into bubbling pots. A girl with sharp eyes and henna'd fingers notices your expression and smirks. "You saw the dung, didn't you?" she says. Everyone reacts that way the first time. You admit it. She hands you a strip of bark. "This one's nicer," she adds. For pleasure, not prevention. You smell it. It's sharp, peppery, a little floral. Most men don't know the difference, she says with a shrug. But that's not our problem. The pot beside her hisses. Steam rises. She stirs slowly, almost seductively, and it occurs to you that brewing here isn't just science or tradition. It's performance. It's intimacy in action. One of the older women begins a story, her voice so low you have to lean in. She tells of a bride who refused to sleep with her husband until he could brew her a beer that tasted like the one her mother made. He tried for 7 moons, failing each time, until one night he mixed it wrong, added too much fig, and accidentally created a sour-sweet flavor that made her gasp and drop the bowl. That, she'd said, is what I wanted, not my mother's, yours. They were inseparable after that. Not because the beer was perfect, but because it was his dot in the background. You notice a group of younger men sitting in a line, blindfolded, each handed a different bowl by unseen hands. This is another tradition, the choice without sight. They drink, then must describe what they feel. If they describe a brew brewed by a girl in the crowd, correctly enough her ingredients, her mood, her intent, they earn the right to speak to her without shame. If they guess wrong, they must wear their blindfolds until dawn. It's hilarious, awkward, and occasionally beautiful. One boy tastes a spicy, smoky brew and says, "This is anger, with sweetness under it." Whoever made this is trying not to. Cry in front of someone. A girl in the back stands quietly. They say nothing, but she hands him her bowl. The others clap. You don't know what's more moving, the ritual or the restraint. Beer in this culture isn't always about celebration. Sometimes it's a vessel for the things you can't say. You learn this firsthand when an old man invites you to sit and share a bowl brewed in apology. He doesn't say what he's apologizing for, but his eyes are full of stories, and when you drink with him, you feel like he's saying thank you for listening. Maybe that's what this ritual is, to a form of listening, with the mouth instead of the ears. Back near the main square, you notice a trio of women performing a kind of chant, a song that weaves the names of herbs with emotional confessions. Mint for when I couldn't speak. Fig for when I stayed too long. Tamarind for when I left too soon. The melody is haunting, rising and falling like breath. You ask where the song came from. One of them shrugs. It's old. Older, then. US, older than the Nile. And somehow it is. You feel that. Like the entire desert is humming it under your feet. You sip one last bowl before moving on. This one heavy with molasses and something bitter, like ground bark. You ask what it's for. A woman with a sly smile says, "For knowing when to stop chasing someone who doesn't want to be caught." It hits you harder than any drink so far. As the firelight flickers and laughter begins to fade into murmurs. You sit alone for a moment and realize just how much has happened beneath this gentle chaos of dancing and drinking and pretending everything is fine. You've seen flirtation, confession, courage, and contraception all played out with bowls of warm, earthy liquid passed hand to hand. You've witnessed love in its rawest forms. Not always pretty, not always fair, but deeply, relentlessly human. And you haven't even made it to the Queen's quarters yet. The drums are softer now, a steady pulse in the distance like the heartbeat of a sleeping god. And you've wandered far from the main fire, past clusters of beer-slick dancers and the last strains of flirtation chants echoing through the date palms. You find yourself near a compound wall, carved with faded images of ibis birds and stylized breasts, symbols not just of fertility, but of power, ownership, and dangerous grace. This is no commoner's hut. The guards at the entrance don't speak. They don't need to. One glance at your beer-stained hands and smudged face, and they seem to decide you're not a threat. Or maybe they're just amused. They step aside. You step in. It's cooler inside the royal compound, scented with blue lotus and something sharper, like crushed myrrh. The floors are smooth. The bowls are gold. And the women, well, they don't just walk. They move like they've already won. Queens, consorts, wives of kings and priests and commanders. But here, within these shaded walls, they are something else too, brewmasters. And they do not take this role lightly. You sit silently as one of them, bare, arms dusted with crushed pearl, her braid long enough to brush the floor stirs, a vat of beer with a rod carved from ivory. She is not rushed, she is not watched, she is the watcher. Another queen, older, leans over a smaller pot, whispering to it like it's a child or a lover, her voice low and rhythmic. She adds date paste, orange peel, and what looks like a strip of leather soaked in something dark. She notices you, smiles without warmth, and says, he likes it with bitterness. It reminds him I'm not easy to keep. You nod, not knowing what else to do. You've entered a different world now, not the giggling, chest-thumping world of teenage seduction, but the high-stakes arena where beer is both weapon and worship. These women are brewing for kings, and kings, as you're about to see, are surprisingly easy to manipulate when their favorite flavor profile is on the line. One of the queens, the youngest, barely older than 20, laughs as she pours her batch into a glass vessel. He thinks this is for pleasure, she says. It's actually to make him sleep. You blink. He talks too much, she adds, casually, and forgets who started this dynasty. You're not sure if she's joking. You're not sure you want to ask. In many ancient cultures, beer brewing was a woman's domain, a domestic task. But here in Nubia, especially behind these royal walls, it's political. It's sensual, it's sacred. Historians still argue whether Nubian queens wielded real power or if they simply operated behind the scenes, pulling emotional strings through rituals and ceremonies. But in this room, filled with fragrant steam and low humming voices, the truth is clear. They don't pull strings. They write the entire play. The men simply perform. A short woman with a sharp jawline beckons you over. Taste, she commands. Holding out a bowl, you sip. It's unlike anything you've tasted tonight, thick, creamy, slightly metallic. This, she says, is royal rage. I brew it when he forgets my name. She laughs. You nearly choke. She takes the bowl back and pours it into a decanter shaped like a lion. He'll drink it anyway, she adds. He always does. You're invited to sit as they gather around a low table, each woman presenting her brew, describing its intent. One made hers for reconciliation after a fight about trade routes. Another brewed hers to seduce her rival's spy into revealing secrets. A third simply says, mine is for morning. He doesn't know it yet. You watch them drink together, not as enemies or even rivals, but as women who understand the terrifying and tender intimacy of being bound to powerful men. They clink their bowls, not in celebration, but in quiet solidarity. Then, as if summoned, a pair of attendants enter carrying small trays of delicacies, candied figs, sesame cakes, and tiny vessels of beer reduction so strong you're warned not to sniff it too hard. For the kings, someone says. You follow, as the trays are taken to a back room, and here's where it gets interesting. The kings are waiting, not sitting on thrones, not issuing decrees, but lounging on cushions, half dressed, half listening. They look bored. One of them perks up when his queen enters. You remembered the saffron, he asks, hopeful. She hands him the bowl. Taste, she replies. He does. His eyes widen. You always know, he says. She smiles, kisses his cheek, and leaves. Behind her back, you catch the tiniest eye roll from one of the other queens. The room smells like power diluted by fermentation. And you realize something profound. In this place, beer is not just a drink. It is memory, wrapped in ritual, offered in seduction, and consumed in 1,000 tiny acts of surrender. The youngest queen sits beside you and whispers, he thinks I brew because I love him. But I brew because I remember who I was before he touched me. You sip from your bowl, unsure if it's fear or awe running through your veins. Then she adds, love and resentment age well together, like barley and thyme. You're escorted back toward the outer courtyard, where a final ritual is taking place. The queens are gathered in a circle, each holding a bowl high, pouring it slowly onto the roots of a pomegranate tree growing in the center. This, one explains, is for the next woman, so she be wise before she gives too much. The roots soak the beer like old secrets, drinking themselves whole dot as you leave the compound. The guards nod again, not in approval but acknowledgement. You've seen what few do, the truth behind royal pleasure, the brood diplomacy of women, who rule from the shadows through scent, taste, and whispers. And in that truth is something dangerous and delicious, something that stays on your tongue long after the foam is gone. You return to the open night with the stars peeled wide like ancient scars in the sky, their glow smeared against the black like old secrets inked onto parchment. The air is thick now, not just with heat, but with something heavier, muskier, more electric. You can feel it on your skin, on the backs of your knees, in that space just below your collarbone. Somewhere nearby, someone laughs a short, breathless laugh and then shushes themselves as if caught in something too intimate for sound. You follow that sound toward a wide clearing where couples are gathering for the most anticipated rite of the night, the seduction bath. Not an actual bath, but a symbolic one, performed through layers of ritual, costume, and just enough barley-based bravado to make it dangerous. This is where the paint comes in ochre and indigo, streaked across torsos, thighs, cheekbones, every exposed surface becoming canvas. There are no mirrors here, only hands lovers painting lovers, friends painting, rivals, exes painting over the parts they once knew. You sit at the edge of it, heart thudding like an echo chamber, watching as a man with a jaw like carved stone kneels before a woman who might as well be carved from sunlight. She holds a pot of deep crimson paint, dips her fingers, and drags them across his chest in a spiral. Not a heart, not a symbol, just a swirl, something ancient, maybe a warning, maybe a memory. He doesn't flinch, just watches her like she's the only thing with gravity left. You're handed a bowl, not of beer this time, but of a thick, fragrant oil that smells like lemon peel, cardamom, and something wild you can't place. For the beard, says the woman next to you. You look at her. She has no beard. She grins. For whatever patch of you needs softening. She pours some into her palms, rubs it over her own arms. Then she leans close and says, "It makes." You glow, like you've just been touched by a god or someone trying very hard to fake it. You laugh and she doesn't, just hands you a brush and a pot of black paint. Make someone remember you, she says. You move through the gathering like a ghost with a paintbrush, witnessing the strange and sensual choreography of a culture that understood long before dating apps that presentation was never just about attraction, it was about storytelling. One woman paints an image of a burning house across her chest. He broke my heart last year, she explains. Tonight I decide if I forgive him. You ask how she know. If he repaints it, she says, with watercolors. And not his fingers. Someone nearby has covered their entire body in tiny dots, millet-sized points of gold that catch the firelight like static. I want to look untouchable, he says, but not unkissable. You don't argue. You just nod. It makes perfect sense. A group gathers around a communal pot of beer, this one infused with rose petals and something so spicy it stings your nose from a distance. It's for bold declarations. The rule is simple. Take a sip and speak your truth. Say what you've been avoiding. Confess what you buried under last season's brew. A girl with a scar down her cheek drinks first. I still love her, she says, even though she left. Even though she forgot my name before the beer ran out. No one laughs, no one comforts, they just nod. That's enough. Another drinks. I've never been kissed sober. Another. I lied about the paternity. Another. I want him. And I know he knows. And I don't care who else is listening. You take a sip, you don't speak. That is also allowed. Historians still argue whether these paint and beard oil seduction rituals were symbolic performances or prelude to sanctioned intimacy. Some scholars believe they were formalized pairings leading to exclusive bonds, while others suggest they were one-night unions blessed by community consent, no more binding than a firefly's flight. But everyone agrees, this was not frivolity. This was structure. This was ceremony. This was consent coded into color and scent, and the texture of crushed blossoms between shoulder blades. A boy no older than 16 sits beside you, nervously tracing a flower on his forearm with trembling fingers. I don't know if she like it, he says. I've never tried before. You ask who? He nods toward a girl taller, older, painted in spirals and wrapped in gold thread. She's not looking at him. Not yet. You take his brush, fix one of the petals, and hand it back. She noticed now, you say. He grins, drinks, waits. Elsewhere, a woman you recognize from earlier, the one who sang about tamarind and regret, sits on a mat, her body completely unpainted, but glowing. She has coated herself in a kind of mica dust, pale silver that clings to her skin like moonlight. I want him to see everything, she whispers, even what he broke. Her bowl is untouched. She doesn't need it anymore. The beer was just a doorway. She's already inside the house. Someone lights a ring of torches around the gathering, signaling the approach of midnight. The painting slows. The oil is capped. The bowls are mostly empty. And one by one, the pairs begin to drift away, some hand in hand. Some with a glance over the shoulder, some alone, but not ashamed. You stand, coated in whatever scent and symbolism you've chosen, and exhale. The night has moved from flirtation to declaration. The masks are off, the colors are on. And you've never seen so many people trying, not to be loved, but to be known. You pass a final pair sitting beneath a fig tree, her hand resting on his knee, his thumb smudging the spiral. She painted across his throat. Do you remember what it meant last year? She asks. He nods. Does it still mean that? She doesn't answer. She leans in and kisses the edge of it, and he closes his eyes. The woman with the oil finds you again. Her arms are shining. Her lips taste faintly of the beer she drank before she kissed you. This part, she says, is my favorite. Not the dance. Not the chase. The silence. When you know someone saw you and liked it, you don't speak. You just stay. Stay in the smell of resin and fig, in the warmth of shared breath, in the hum of torches. The night isn't over, but the performance is. What comes next is quieter, stranger, slower, but it's still part of the same story. And you, painted and poured and witnessed, are still in it. There's a sound you hear before you see them, sharp, brittle, like laughter breaking over cold stone. Not the playful kind, not tonight. It's the sound of someone remembering something they tried very hard to forget. You round a corner lit by guttering oil lamps and walk straight into the smoke of a burnt brew. The smell is unmistakable. Scorched barley, bitterness layered with something sour, like dreams left out in the sun too long. A woman stands over the pot, arms crossed, staring at the thick char on the rim as though it personally betrayed her. Around her, shards of a broken bowl scatter like bone fragments. There's a man nearby, face red from heat or guilt, you can't tell. His mouth opens, closes, opens again. Nothing. You've just stepped into the middle of a Nubian breakup. And it's not the quiet kind. This isn't a festival scene. It's aftermath. And beer, as it turns out, can carry as much venom as it can flirtation. The woman, once a favorite of the brewing circle, is now surrounded by silence. No one steps forward to taste. No one offers a comment. Her batch failed. And in a culture where emotional precision is poured into clay jars, that means something. But it wasn't just the batch. It was the intention behind it. A reconciliation beer gone wrong. A love charm backfiring. She spits into the ashes and mutters, should have left him thirsty. In Nubia, when a romance ends, it doesn't vanish, it ferments. It sours, it develops flavor. People say you can taste heartbreak, and tonight you do. You sip from your own bowl, and even the honey can't cover the hint of regret now lingering on your tongue. Someone beside you leans in and whispers, last year she gave him a fidelity brew. Said it would keep him loyal. He shared it with someone else before he even swallowed. You wince. Not because it's cruel, but because it's so familiar. You follow the man as he stumbles away, clutching a half-full jug. He's not weeping, he's simmering. He walks to the riverbank, squats, and starts to pour the beer slowly into the Nile, a slow, painful libation. Maybe she'll forgive me next flood, he says, half to you, half to no one. He scratches something into the mud. Her name, then a fish symbol, then a line through both. Historians still argue whether these post-breakup rituals had spiritual meaning or were just emotional housekeeping, masquerading as tradition. But watching him now, you know this is deeper than theatrics. This is grief. This is humility with a barley aftertaste. Not far from the river, a small group of women gather around a different kind of pot. The revenge brew, darker than night, infused with crushed chili and a type of fermented onion you didn't know could smell like betrayal. We don't serve it, one says. We wear it. And they do, brushing it along their necks, rubbing it into their wrists. One leans down and marks a symbol onto her thigh with it, a spiral with a jagged edge. You ask what it means. She smiles. It means he'll remember me every time he drinks someone else's beer. You believe her. A man joins them, holding a tiny cup. He drinks without hesitation. His lips twitch, eyes water, and he says, I deserve that. They hand him a slice of tamarind to chase the burn. He takes it like penance. In a culture where romantic gestures often begin with a bowl, it makes sense that they end with one too. Everything is cyclical. Brewed, tasted, remembered. Nearby, someone starts a song, slow, bluesy, more hum than melody. The words drift on. The night air. Asterisk, if your love sours, let the gods drink it. If your fire cools, let the wind carry the smoke. Asterisk, no one claps. No one sings along. It's not that kind of song. It's for listening, for absorbing, for letting a small part of yourself dissolve into it like sugar in warm beer. You move toward a quieter, circle, one of those strange social purgatories where people who recently split come to sit beside each other without talking. The ex's bench, someone calls it, though there's no actual bench, just a log. A few blankets and a shared understanding that whatever happened during the firelight has cooled, but not vanished. Two people sit there now. They don't touch, don't look, but their bowls rest side by side, the liquid inside slowly leveling out with each breeze. They used to brew together, a girl whispers. You could always taste when they were fighting his bitterness, her salt. But it worked. Until it didn't. You ask what happens next, she shrugs. They'll brew alone for a while. Maybe share with strangers. Maybe not brew at all. That's the real danger. When someone stops pouring entirely. You think of how many breakups you've seen in your own world that ended not with a scream, but with a slow silence that grew like mold. And you realize this. This weird, beautiful system of beer as emotion is doing something we've forgotten how to do. It's grieving in public. It's letting heartbreak have form, have taste, have scent. It's refusing to pretend everything is fine when it's clearly not. You pass by a table covered in broken bowls, literal shards of ceramic laid out like exhibits. Each one is labeled. The bowl of one last chance. The infidelity chalice. The bitter truth. A woman stands over them, humming, assembling fragments with gold leaf and sap resin. I mend them, she says. Sometimes people ask for them back. Sometimes they want to see them broken forever. Her fingers are stained, her nails dark with ash. I like the cracked ones better. They hold more stories. You believe her too. Just beyond, a boy sits alone, stirring his finger in a bowl gone flat. It didn't work, he mutters. I added everything she liked, even the almond bark. She still chose him. You sit beside him. He doesn't look up. They say the gods taste your tears when you brew heartbroken. I hope they get drunk on mine. You don't say anything. You sip from your own bowl, and it tastes a little saltier now. There's a final scene before you leave this part of the night. A woman, eyes rimmed in dark paint, walks barefoot into the center of the gathering. She holds no bowl. She carries no jug, just a single stalk of barley braided into her hair. She stands still, silent, then speaks one line. I will not brew again until someone tastes me without flinching. Then she turns and walks into the dark, and no one follows. Not because they don't care, but because they understand. Sometimes in Nubia, heartbreak brews alone. And that too is sacred. You wake to the sound of bowls clinking, not in merriment this time, but rhythm, repetition, a sort of slow-motion chorus carried through the morning hush. The sky above is rinsed in the soft pink of sunrise, and the festival's wild heat has cooled into something quieter, more deliberate. You follow the sounds toward a large hearth near the eastern side of the village, where steam rises in gentle waves from pots set deep into the earth. This isn't a public celebration. This is private, intimate, and yet somehow everyone is welcome. You step into the circle and realize what you're witnessing: the morning after gathering of sister wives. They sit in a loose ring, their hair undone, shoulders bare, faces still painted in the symbols of last night's desires, but softened now, smudged by sleep and maybe a few stolen kisses. They move with the ease of women who know each other, not just through shared space, but through shared choices, shared silences, shared husbands. This isn't rivalry. This is alliance. And at the center of it all is a great, heavy-lipped jug one, used only by the women, passed only from wife to wife, never to men. This is the brew of solidarity, of post-passion recalibration. The co-wives' communion. You take a seat at the outer edge, careful not to interrupt, and listen. One woman, older, her voice like cracked leather, recounts her first brew for their husband, a beer so sour he spat it out, and then married her anyway. That was when I knew I had power, she says, sipping. Another, younger, pregnant, and glowing, adds her own story. He brought me date honey from the north. I used all of it in my batch. He drank it and didn't touch any other wife for 3 nights. Laughter, then silence, then a sigh. It doesn't last, says another, but it counts. You realize quickly that this gathering is not about competing, it's about decoding. Every woman here has learned to read the moods of their shared man through the bottom of a bowl. When he likes her brew, one says, he sleeps facing her. When he's lying, he overpraises. Calls it interesting. Another adds, if he's planning to take another wife, he pretends he's too full for beer. That's how you know. You sit stunned by the clarity. These aren't just wives. They're strategists, analysts. Their marriage isn't a cage, it's a council. And yet, it's not all theory. One woman, her voice quiet, almost tired, says, I haven't brewed for him in 3 moons. He hasn't noticed. No one mocks her. No one pities her. They just pass her the jug, and she drinks. Not in sadness, but in recognition. Here, silence is an ingredient. Grief, a spice. They begin to share recipes, not just of ingredients, but of outcomes. If you want to make him dream of you, add starflower soaked in moonlight. If you want him to forget her, use burnt sugar and dried pear. If you want to forgive him but don't want him to know it yet, brew with half a pomegranate and a trace of salt. These aren't just superstitions. They're cultural code, passed from woman to woman, mother to daughter, co-wife to co-wife, wrapped in metaphor and sometimes soaked in revenge. One mentions using anise root to confuse his sense of smell. He came home calling her sweet, but was too distracted to remember why. Another laughs. I once added so much cinnamon he couldn't sit still. He thought he was in love. He was just overstimulated. Historians still argue whether sister-wife communities in ancient Nubia were harmonious arrangements or quietly simmering powder kegs. Some point to inscriptions that show equal dowry allocations and shared property. Others cite records of disputes settled with public ceremonies and sometimes, though rarely, divorce. But here, in the Sunrise Circle, it's clear. These women don't have to love each other. They choose to understand each other. And sometimes, that's more durable. A girl sits beside you now. She's not yet a wife, but clearly preparing. Her hands fidget with a scrap of cloth. I watch them all. Night, she whispers. I think I want to marry into a house like this. You ask why? She shrugs. I'd rather share something real than own something fake. She points to the jug, and I want to learn to brew that. The older woman nearby overhears and nods. It takes years, she says. But you'll learn. We all did. Through mistakes, mostly. One of the wives stands now and begins to stir a fresh batch. The fire crackles. The smell of barley fills the air. But this brew is different. It's not for their husband, it's for themselves. We call it the reset brew, she says. After the festival, after the kisses, after the jealousy, it returns us to ourselves. Each ingredient added has a reason. Crushed rose for softness, mint for clarity, and dried lime for the parts they're still bitter about, but too tired to argue. They chant as they stir not a song, but a rhythm, a mantra. Something about bodies and boundaries. Something about choosing softness after being split open by desire that you drink last. It's light, crisp, a little sharp, but it leaves your chest warm, not like fire but like memory. It tastes like the moment after an apology, before the forgiveness kicks in. As the sun climbs higher, the gathering begins to dissolve. The wives rise, stretch, tie their hair back. Some return to their children, some to their weaving. Some, you suspect, back to lovers that aren't officially theirs. But before they scatter, they do one last thing. They dip their fingers in the jug and mark their foreheads. One line, one dot. A symbol only they understand. You ask what it means. It means we remember, one says. Even when he forgets, you walk away from the circle changed. Not by spectacle, but by nuance. You've seen seduction. But this is the aftermath, the management, the diplomacy. The shared emotional labor of women who drink from the same bowl and manage to stay whole, not in spite of it, but because of it. You hear them before you see them. Bodies moving like flame caught in human form. Each gesture a flicker, a tease, a hypnotic repetition. The sand beneath your feet hums, not metaphorically, literally. There's a vibration to it, low and steady, like someone strumming the earth's spine. You follow it past the scattered fire pits and empty jugs until you reach the ceremonial circle where it's all happening. Dancers, dozens of them, wrapped in layers of cloth so sheer they move like mist, bones and sinew gleaming through the fabric, eyes dark and focused, lips parted not in performance, but possession. They're not dancing for you, they're dancing through you. Through the air, the sound, the fire, and something else that tastes like ancient power and warm fermented promises. Welcome to the rite of the brew gods, the sacred performance where love, lust, and legacy collide under open sky. At the center of it all stands the high chantress, her feet barely brushing the earth as she rotates, hands lifting invisible threads into the air. Her braids are laced with cowrie shells, each click of her movement marking time not in minutes but in meanings. Around her, the dancers mimic animals stalking, chasing, merging. First 2 lions, then birds in flight, then crocodiles. then people, lovers, gods. And all the while, from clay vessels positioned around the circle, thick plumes of smoke rise, carrying with them the scent of the ceremonial beer, a heady blend of date wine, fermented barley, and something smoky sweet that smells like longing. Boiled down to its essence, someone passes you a bowl. You drink. It's warmer than it should be, almost electric, and it hits the back of your throat like a promise whispered by someone you haven't met yet, but somehow already miss. You watch as a pair of dancers break from the circle, bodies glistening. With oil and sweat, their movements now slower, intimate, not for show but for invocation. They're enacting the myth of Nubia's original lovers, two spirits who brewed beer for each other across enemy lines, then vanished into the desert to avoid choosing between their people. The legend says their bowls were never found, but their scent lingers in certain windstorms. You smell it now. Maybe, suddenly the drums shift, harder, faster, a trance beat, designed not to entertain but to erode resistance. The dancers press closer, their breath loud, synchronized, as if one lung is split across 20 bodies. The chantress begins to chant, not in words, but in vibrations, vowels stretched and bent into rhythm, poured into the circle like liquid. It's not a song, it's a spell. And the beer, you realize, is not an offering. It's a co-conspirator. A girl beside you explains it, whispering fast. This is where they ask the gods for union, for fertility, for answers, for release. She points to the pots. Each brew is dedicated. One for new love, one for rekindled fire, one for letting go. The dancers dip reeds into the vessels and drink mid-performance, passing the reeds between each other like kisses with stems. Each sip infuses their next movement, their next gesture. You can see it. When one drinks the new love brew, their dance becomes erratic, bashful, full of stutters. When another drinks from letting go, they collapse into slow spirals, arms loose, shoulders soft with surrender. You watch a boy pour the contents of his bowl directly onto his chest. Steam rises, he shivers, then joins the others, eyes closed, a single tear carving through the paint on his face. You don't know what he lost. You don't need to. Historians still argue whether these ceremonies were literal worship of deities or metaphorical expressions of communal desire. Some say the dances honored Hathor, goddess of love and intoxication. Others suggest it was Isis. Still others believe it was older than all that, a local spirit, a river ghost, something unnamed. But tonight, it doesn't matter. The energy is real. The transformation is real. You feel it thrumming in your bones like a second pulse. The climax of the rite is near. The chantress steps into the fire circle now, carrying a single bowl jet black, wrapped in copper wire. No one knows what's in it. It's only brewed once a year. She raises it high. The dancers freeze. The music stops. Silence. Even the wind waits. She drinks. One long, unbroken gulp. Then, gently, she tips the rest into the fire. Flames roar up, not high, but wide, curling around her feet like golden snakes. When the flames subside, she's gone. Not literally, she's standing at the pee. Edge now, breathing hard, covered in sweat. But something of her has left, given, sacrificed, offered through beer and blood and breath. And then, the audience is invited in. Not to perform, but to participate. You're handed a small piece of cloth red, ochre-stained, damp. You're told to press it to your chest, then dip it in one of the remaining bowls. The act symbolizes your intent, what you want, what you need, what you're afraid to say aloud. You choose the rekindled fire pot. The beer is cool now. You press the cloth to your chest, then into the liquid. When you pull it out, it's darker, heavier, weighted with hope or delusion or maybe just fermentation. You hang it on the offering line that stretches between two fig trees, joining dozens of others. A forest of silent prayers, fluttering in the wind like love notes with no return address. Around you, others do the same. One girl dips her cloth and mutters, "Let him see me this time." Another says nothing, just closes her eyes and breathes. In the scent of the beer-soaked fabric, like it's someone's neck she used to know, a man cries openly, holding his cloth like a dead bird. No one laughs. This isn't a show anymore. It's confession. It's community. It's the space between heartbreak and hope, measured in sips and steps and sacred sweat. As the sky begins to lighten with the first hint of false dawn, the dancers gather in a closing circle. No more movement, just stillness. The fire crackles. Lo, the bowls are empty, but something lingers, a feeling, a promise. You stand among strangers who now feel like echoes of your own longing. No one speaks. No one needs to. The gods have already been told, and the beer, they say the beer will remember it all. She doesn't look like much at first. Just an old woman hunched on a reed mat, her face veiled in soot, one eye cloudy, the other narrow and watching. But you don't laugh. No one laughs. Not even the drunkest man dares laugh in the presence of the beer oracle. Her hut sits on the edge of the village, just far enough to make the walk feel like a pilgrimage, close enough to remind you that fate isn't distant. It's watching you from across the firelight. There's a scent in the air that clings to your skin, burnt dates, bitter herbs, and whetstone. Someone mutters behind you. She reads the foam. You nod like you understand. You don't, but you're about to. You step closer, and she gestures. Without a word. A single clay bowl sits between you, the beer inside still. No bubbles yet. "Drink," she says, voice like gravel soaked in smoke. You obey. It's thick, spiced, sweet at the end. Then she takes the bowl, tilts it, squints at the foam as it rises and breaks across the curve of the rim. Her eye sharpens. Her breath slows. And then she says something that feels like it's not meant to be heard aloud. You're chasing someone who already forgave you, but will never return. You freeze. You didn't tell her anything. You didn't have to. She reads the beer. Like some people read palms or bones, and she's never wrong. Not once. Ask the couple who waited a decade because she told them their union would kill a harvest god. They waited, brewed in secret, and when they finally paired off, 3 months of locusts. Coincidence? Maybe. Ask the boy who laughed when she said his lover would vanish in a dust storm. He laughed. She vanished. The storm didn't. The oracle dips her finger into the foam and draws a symbol on the clay table beside her, 2 half-moons circling each other but never touching. This is your pattern, she says. You offer, you wait, you pour, and no one drinks. Her words aren't cruel, they're surgical. You try to respond, but she waves you off. Foam never lies, it breaks where we break. A younger woman enters, tears already on her cheeks, carrying a jug. The oracle does not comfort her. She takes the jug, tastes, then spits. Too much desperation, she mutters. Brewed too fast. You want results, not truth. The girl flinches, and the oracle softens slightly. But you'll learn. We all do. One bad batch doesn't mean a ruined brew. She hands the jug back. Add time next time. Patience tastes bitter, but works. You glance around. The hut is filled with bowls, stacked, hung, cracked. Each labeled with a name, a date, a single phrase carved along the side. He left at dusk. She never said goodbye. It was always his sister. These are not artifacts, these are emotional fossils. Each bowl a confession, a collapse, a truth tasted and then put away. She keeps them, not as trophies, but as proof. A man arrives now, proud, beaming, clutching 2 cups. She said yes, he shouts. She drank my brew. He places the emptier of the 2 before the oracle. She frowns, pours a bit into a shallow dish, waits. The foam is slow to rise. When it does, it bubbles to one side, oddly slanted. She's not done grieving her last, the oracle says. The man's smile fades. But she drank it, the oracle shrugs. She drank it out of hunger, not love. Brew again, brew better. Historians still argue whether the beer oracle was a real role or symbolic, a collective memory wrapped in the figure of an old woman. Some believe she was part priestess, part judge. Others think she was simply the village's most intuitive woman, passed knowledge down through taste, time, and tragedy. But no matter how many debates unfold in academic journals, here in this hut, no one questions her. Not because of fear, because of accuracy. You sip from another bowl, offered by a quiet boy sitting in the corner. She hasn't spoken to me in months, he says. But I brewed this the way she used to like it. You taste. There's citrus, a hint of garlic, smoke. It's strange, brave, honest. The oracle watches the foam, tilts her head. She dreams about you, she says, but not the way you hope. The boy nods. Quietly thanks her. He doesn't cry. He just exhales like someone who finally got the answer even if it hurts. The oracle turns to you again. Do you want to know what yours says now? You hesitate, then nod. She pours a fresh bowl, stirs 3 times clockwise, lets it settle, then watches, long, too long. Finally she says, you're about to taste something you won't forget, but it won't last. Foam breaks. That's its nature. You want more. You want a loophole. But she's already turning away. Outside her hut, a small group waits their turn. Some hopeful, some terrified. One girl clutching a bowl like a lifeline. One older man gripping a jug he's clearly carried for years. You walk past them, bowl in hand, unsure if it's lighter or heavier than before. The oracle's voice floats behind you. Not all sips are meant to go down smooth. Some are meant to wake you up. You step into the sunlight again. Everything looks different, sharper, less enchanted maybe, but more real. And somewhere in the back of your throat, the taste lingers, bitter, sweet, terrifyingly true. And the foam? You swear it moved. You hear it before you see it. A hiss of something boiling too fast. The unmistakable pop of clay cracking from heat. And the low, anxious laugh of someone who knows they've just broken a rule that didn't come with instructions. You follow the scent, sharp, sweet, vaguely illegal, and it leads you past the outer huts, past the faded torches, past the circle of approval, and into a place that smells like risk. There's no path here, just tracks in the dust made by bear. Feet in a hurry, and when you duck behind a curtain of woven reeds, you find them. 2 people, 1 pot, and a secret so hot it's steaming up the leaves around them. He's leaning over the fire, sweat streaking his back, stirring something in. A makeshift brewing pot that looks like it was borrowed from a family kitchen and never returned. She's sitting cross-legged, crushing herbs with a pestle far too small for the job. Her eyes flicking toward the horizon every few seconds. Not in fear, in defiance. You don't need context. You've seen this kind of energy before. Forbiddens. And intoxicating because of it. He turns, sees you, and doesn't flinch. You didn't see us, he says. You nod, because that's the rule here. In this sliver of the village where light doesn't quite reach and judgment can't follow. Lovers brew in secret, not just beer, but futures. Futures they're not allowed to want. She pours something into the pot, liquid so dark it swallows the firelight, and says, we don't have enough for a full batch. He answers without looking. Then we make it stronger. There. Not talking about beer anymore. Not really. You sit down on a nearby stone and watch as the illegal alchemy unfolds. Their hands move like clockwork. Their shoulders bump once, twice, then settle into that comfortable proximity that says we've touched before and we're not sorry. This isn't just brewing. It's rebellion. In some Nubian households, especially those with strict lineage and property laws, romantic pairings required approval, not from gods, but from mothers. From clan elders, from the man who owned the land you were born on. But love, as usual, couldn't care less. And so lovers met behind granaries, under river bridges, in abandoned goat pens, anywhere they could build their own rituals with stolen ingredients and borrowed time. The girl, her name, you later learn, is Sataline's over, and tastes the brew with a reed. Her face twists. Too honest, she says. It needs sweetness or they'll know. He replies, let them. No. She hands him a fistful of crushed tamarind. Not yet. You realize now that they're not just hiding from family or neighbors. They're hiding from history itself. He's a foreign trader's son. She's the daughter of a high-status brewer. A match like theirs doesn't just bend tradition, it snaps it. And yet, here they are, brewing something together that tastes like defiance and hope. You ask what the plan is. They smile at each other, and it's the kind of smile that needs no explanation. We're going to leave, she says. Take the brew, trade it north, open a shop, sell love legally. You laugh until you realize they're serious. The boy Amru adds, we've already tested it on 2 couples. One eloped. The other just kissed for an hour. He holds up a tiny jar. Inside is a thick syrupy extract, concentrated from 5 brews. 1 drop in your beer, and you'll know if they're telling the truth about their feelings. You ask if it works. He shrugs. It worked on us. And suddenly, the full weight of what they're doing hits you. This isn't just about beer. It's about autonomy, about control, about rewriting the rules of a culture that uses brewing as both bond and barrier. In ancient Nubia, fermentation wasn't just culinary, it was political. To brew together was to be seen as united. To brew in secret? That was a revolution bubbling under the surface. Historians still argue whether these kinds of forbidden brews were widespread or rare. Some texts suggest entire communities once formed from couples who fled traditional hierarchies. Others claim such brews were considered dangerous, associated with madness, hallucinations, even infertility. But here in this quiet alcove, what you see is not madness. It's clarity, passion without permission, risk without regret. Sadi adds a final touch, a handful of crushed hibiscus petals, staining the brew red as blood. It'll cool fast, she says. Help it blend. You ask what happens if someone finds them. Amru just smiles. Then we drink it all ourselves and run faster than shame. He kisses her forehead, quick and sure, then pours the brew into a waiting jug, sealed with beeswax and wrapped in linen like a newborn. She cradles it. We call it first pour. It only works if you've never lied to each other. You leave them as quietly as you arrived, stepping back into the sanctioned world where bowls are passed in daylight and affections are approved by committee. But you carry the scent of their brew on your fingers, the memory of their flame in your chest. And you know there are more like them. Lovers with no blessing but their own. Recipes never written down. Flavors too honest for tradition. Back at the edge of the village, an older woman catches a whiff of you as you pass. She sniffs, pauses, says nothing, but her eyes linger a little too long. She's tasted that brew before, or something like it. You keep walking, and the wind, still warm from the fire, carries the smell of rebellion all the way to the Nile. It begins with smoke again, but this time it's different. Thicker, sweeter, like burnt honey over dried bones. You follow it toward a half-dug courtyard behind the main brewing house, where the air is heavy with incense and something colder, older. Ashes flutter in the air like gray butterflies, and under your feet, the ground feels softer, recently disturbed. You've stumbled into an ancestor rite, not the loud public kind with songs and symbolic bowls, but the private kind. The one whispered about during late-night brewing sessions and side-eyed when someone drinks alone too long. Here, the beer isn't just for pleasure or flirtation, it's for the dead. And sometimes they answer back. A line of clay jars sits along the edge of a low stone platform. each sealed with wax, each marked with symbols that pulse with meaning. Spirals, broken reeds, open palms. One of the brewers, a woman with short hair, cracked lips, and eyes like wet ash, nods at you. Without smiling, "You came at the right time," she says. "The dead are in a generous mood tonight." She hands you a bowl. It's warm, almost uncomfortably so, and as you lift it, a strange thought slides across your mind like mist. This doesn't taste like it's meant for me. You sip anyway. The liquid is earthy, faintly metallic, but sweet at the end. A surprising kindness. "That was my great-grandmother's recipe," the woman says. "We only brew it once a year, when we need advice." You glance at the bowl again. It's steaming now, though the fire is nowhere near it. The other brewers begin to hum a low, vibrating sound like bees whispering, and one by one, they pour their bowls into the central pit, not onto the ground, into a carefully cut basin lined with reeds and bone dust. It carries the brew. "Down," someone explains, "to the ones who remember more than we do." And then, the questions begin. One woman kneels beside the basin and says, "Did I choose the wrong husband?" Silence. Then the reeds rustle, though there's no wind. Another leans in. "Should I leave this village?" The flame beside her flares once. A man asks if his son's affections are truly his own or manipulated by love charms. The beer bubbles in response. You ask nothing. You just hold your bowl, heart racing, because the beer in your hands is still warm, still changing, still tasting. Like a name you haven't said in years, historians still argue whether these rituals were sincere, ancestor communication, or symbolic closures for unresolved guilt. Some archaeologists believe the pit basins were purely practical drainage channels for spilled offerings. But oral histories paint a different picture, one where spirits didn't just receive, they replied, through dreams, through omens, through the way your beer settled in your throat after a question you shouldn't have asked. You're invited to participate. A brewer paints a line of ash across your forehead and offers a choice of 3 vessels. One is chipped. One glows faintly. One is bone dry. You choose the chipped one. It feels like the only honest choice. You pour it into the basin and whisper a name not one of yours, but one you've carried like a stone. The response is slow, a reed uncurls, the smoke shifts, and behind you someone gasps. You turn, no one's looking at you. But the brewer who gave you the bowl nods. They heard you. Then the night turns. The questions become less polite. Who poisoned the festival brew 3 seasons ago? Which child carries the wrong man's blood? Did she love me, or just the way I tasted? These aren't theoretical. They're arrows aimed through generations, and the beer doesn't flinch. It answers. Always. Sometimes gently. Sometimes not. One woman collapses when her bowl cracks mid-question. Another laughs when the foam forms her lost sister's name. You stand among them, a witness to something both sacred and uncomfortably personal. Then a boy steps forward. He can't be more than 17. His hands shake as he clutches a bowl marked with jagged glyphs. "I want to know what my mother didn't say." The basin goes silent. No bubbling, no rustle. The brewers exchange glances. One steps forward. "You don't always get to ask the same question twice," she says. He nods, pours, waits. Nothing. Just steam rising, slower than before. Then faintly the scent changes. From barley and herbs to something sour. The foam spreads in a perfect circle. The lid brewer sighs. "That's your answer." She chose silence over fire. That means it burned too much to speak. You realize then that these aren't casual rituals. These are relational exorcisms. The brew is not a tool, it's a threshold. You don't sip it to feel better. You sip it to know more than you probably should. And sometimes, knowledge curdles. One of the older women pulls out a jar labeled in red ink. Lover's Ash. She opens it and the smell punches you in the throat. Charred sugar. Burnt time, and the unmistakable heat of something that was once sweet and turned. This is for those who never apologized, she says. We brew it to remember why not. All pain deserves forgetting. She pours it into the basin and says a single name. You swear the ground shudders. There's a final round. Everyone offers one word. No questions. Just a name, or a place, or a regret. You're told to speak only. If you're ready to carry what comes next, you hesitate. Then say yours. It hangs in the air like a stain. The brewer beside you squeezes your hand. Now drink, she says. You don't get to leave thirsty. You take the last sip. It's sharp, cold, but clear. And for a moment, you feel like someone is watching you not from outside, but from inside the taste itself. A gaze buried deep in barley and fire. As you leave, the woman with the short hair touches your shoulder. They don't always answer right away, she says. But they always hear. And if they want you to listen back, they'll come find you in taste, in dreams, in who chooses to sip from your bowl next. You step out into the night, bowl empty, heart strangely full. And behind you, the pit still bubbles. It begins with footsteps rapid, barefoot, too urgent for ceremony. The kind that slice through silence like bone through broth. You turn just in time to see a girl sprinting down the village's outer path. A jug clutched against her chest, her shawl flapping behind her like the last banner of a battle already lost. She doesn't look back. That's how you know it's real. Real love, real fear, real flight. And you follow not because it's safe, but because something in your bones whispers, this is the story you'll remember. She disappears beyond the date palms, and you run to catch the dust she leaves behind. Welcome to the beer-fueled elopement. Ritual, part rebellion, part passion, part logistical nightmare on sand. They say when a couple elopes in Nubia, the gods either laugh or listen. If they laugh, your beer spoils. If they listen, your jug stays warm, no matter how cold the night gets. Tonight, the gods are still deciding. You find her crouched in the reeds, breath sharp, cheeks flushed, pouring her brew into a wide bowl. As if racing time itself. A boy arrives seconds later, equally breathless, equally beautiful in that desperate, edge-of-collapse way. Did you bring the saffron? She asks. He grins and pulls a tiny pouch from under his belt. Did you bring the bowl that doesn't crack? They laugh. Just once. And in that sound is the promise of everything they're about to lose, and maybe win. She pours. He stirs. You watch from behind a half-buried cartwheel, heart thudding in a rhythm that doesn't belong to you. They're brewing what's called the escape batch, a beer designed not for celebration, not even for seduction, but for endurance. For crossing desert miles with nothing but hope and a jar of fermented defiance. It's strong, dense, laced with dried dates, chili, and a bark that's said to help you run longer and lie better. The ritual is simple. Brew together. Drink together. Run. If the brew holds its flavor past dawn, the union is blessed. If it sours before first light, one of them wasn't ready. Historians still argue whether these elopement brews were rare exceptions or underground traditions. Most records dismiss them as fringe behavior, impulsive passion. But oral histories always richer, always messier speak of lovers who vanished into the dunes, never to return, their beer bowls found years later, still carrying the scent of cinnamon and risk. The couple, now kneeling on a blanket stitched with moon patterns, lifts the bowl between them. They sip in silence, not from hesitation, but reverence. Then as the wind rises, she says, if this turns, we turn back. He nods. If it holds, we keep running. They clink the bowl once softly and begin to move. You trail them at a distance. They don't speak. Their footsteps fall in, sink. The moon offers just enough light to see their silhouettes merge and stretch across the sand. At one point, she stumbles. He offers no words, only his hand. She takes it. That's enough. Midway through their escape, they pause at a shrine half buried. In the dunes, a single bowl rests there, filled with sand and dried rose petals. They pour a few drops of their beer inside. "For those who came before," she whispers, "and didn't make it," he adds, "and for those who will come next and might." They continue. By now, your breath is shallow. Not from running, but from the weight of witnessing something. So raw, so alive, you forget to blink. They find a low dune, curl beneath it, shielding their brew from the wind. She unwraps a bundle of bread. He pours the beer into smaller cups. They toast nothing, everything, and drink. Then, the test. She tastes it again, sniffs, sips, hands it to him. He does the same. Still sweet. Still sharp. Still theirs. They sigh in relief, so pure, it makes you dizzy. You realize this isn't about breaking rules. It's about building something outside them. The beer hasn't turned. The gods are listening. Just before dawn, they bury the last of the brew beneath a flat stone marked with a symbol. 2 dots within a single circle. Unity within rebellion. A love that didn't ask permission. You step forward now, no longer hiding, and they don't flinch. She looks at you, eyes bright. "Tell them we didn't regret it." You ask if they'll ever come back. He shakes his head. "Not unless the beer calls us." You walk back alone, the sky softening into blue, your skin still tingling with the scent of their wild brew. And somewhere deep in your throat, you swear you can still taste it, bold, unfiltered, and utterly unforgettable. The music finds you before the crowd does, drifting like a ribbon across the sun-baked fields just beyond the last hut. Not loud, not frantic. A single string instrument, old and frayed, coaxing out a melody that feels like it's been hiding under your skin for years. You follow it, not because you're curious, but because you have no choice. This isn't the kind of sound you walk away from. It's the kind that wraps itself around your spine and leads you where it wants. You crest a small hill and there he is. The bard, or what passes for one in this part of Nubia. He's shirtless, wrapped in a sun-bleached shawl, sitting on a carved stool older than most dynasties, plucking at an instrument that looks like it was built from leftover gods. Around him, a semicircle of listeners, silent as ruins. The kind of silence that says, asterisk, don't interrupt. Don't even breathe wrong. Asterisk, and then he sings. It's not what you expect. It's not polished. It's not neat. It's raw, half-spoken, half-chanted, more seduction than song. A tale of a woman who brewed beer so rich, so sweet, so potent that her husband forgot how to lie. Every time he sipped, the truth spilled out: affairs, debts, fears, even the fact that he once kissed her sister during a harvest festival. She forgave him, of course. Brewed him another batch. This time with a little less fig and a lot more forgiveness. The bard pauses, looks directly at a woman in the crowd, and strums once. She blushes. He smiles. Then he keeps going. He tells of a king who fell in love with a slave. Not because she was beautiful, but because her beer made him dream of his mother's voice. Of a widow who brewed beer for a ghost, and woke to find the bowl empty and a handprint on her chest. Of a jealous husband who tried to curse his wife's brew with scorpion venom, only to drink it himself when she switched the bowls. He lived, barely, but learned. These aren't fairy tales. These are histories wrapped in verse. Sensual, messy, unforgettable. The bard changes rhythm. Slower now. Thicker. He sings of a woman whose laugh made beer foam rise too high. A man whose hands could stir without splashing. Lovers who only spoke in ingredients. If I say hibiscus, I mean I miss you. If I say garlic, I'm angry. If I say barley, I'm ready. The crowd hums in recognition. You do too. You've heard these words before, maybe not in this life, but somewhere deep in the body's memory. The place where taste and emotion blur. He finishes one song and immediately begins another, this one with a beat tapped out on the side of the gourd. A tale of a cursed brew passed through generations, made only for weddings, always ending in tragedy. One couple forgot to sip it before their vows. They lasted until their first argument over a burned stew. Another drank too much and couldn't stop confessing until they dissolved the marriage in laughter. It's not the brew, the bard says mid-song. It's the fear. Some love is too honest to survive exposure. You glance around. The audience has changed. A man now grips a woman's hand so tightly his knuckles bleach. An older woman wipes her eyes without shame. A younger boy records the melody in his head like it's a map to somewhere sacred. And you've forgotten to breathe again, not because of the stories, but because of the silences between them. That space where words should be, but aren't. That's where the truth lives. Historians still argue whether bards in Nubian culture were archivists, entertainers, or social disruptors. Some suggest they held no official status. Others argue their songs carried legal implications, their verses, used in disputes and reconciliations. But tonight, you see the truth. This bard isn't a performer. He's a translator. Of hearts, of histories, of things that can only be said when they're strung between chords. He shifts again, final song. You sense. No rhythm now, just slow, aching syllables. This is the song for when you taste someone who doesn't taste you back, he says. The crowd goes still. The story is short. A woman brews for a man. He drinks, smiles, leaves. She brews again. He returns, drinks, leaves. She keeps brewing. One day, the bowl is empty before he arrives. One day, she forgets to flavor it. One day, she drinks it herself. That, he says, is how love unlearns itself. You don't clap. No one claps. Instead, bowls are passed around, not for celebration, but reflection. You sip. It's light. Simple. No tricks. And somehow, that's what makes it hurt the most. The bard packs his instrument, says nothing, walks away. You want to follow. Ask how he learned all this, where the stories come from. But the woman, beside you, eyes glassy, bowl untouched, whispers. He listens more than he speaks. That's where the real brewing begins. You stay seated long after the crowd drifts away. The sun is high now, the shadows sharper. But the songs linger on your skin, in your ribs, behind your teeth. Not just because they were beautiful, but because they reminded you that every brew carries a melody. And some songs are only heard after the last sip is gone. You wouldn't even notice the circle if someone hadn't dropped their bowl beside it. A simple clay ring etched into the sand, faint, scuffed by footprints, but still whole. At first glance, it looks like a child's game, or maybe a decorative mark left by an idle brewer. But the silence surrounding it tells you otherwise. People walk around it, not through it. Eyes drop, conversations hush. You found something sacred and slightly terrifying. The foam trial dot. It's called different names in different villages. The truth pour, the fidelity ring, the test of foam. But everyone knows what it means. You step into the circle with a partner and place your shared brew in the center. Then you speak a truth, or ask a question. The beer answers, not with words, but with how it reacts. If the foam rises evenly, you're safe. If it curls to one side, sinks too fast, or worst of all fizzles out before either of you touch it, then it's over. Whatever it is, this isn't about performance. This is about precision. About gut checks and consequences. A crowd starts to form as a young couple steps into the circle. They look calm, but no one really is in that ring. He sets the bowl down. She speaks first. Did you sleep with her? 3 ingredients lace those words: bitterness, bravery, and barely restrained heartbreak. He doesn't answer. He just looks at the bowl. The foam flattens, fast. A collective exhale ripples through the crowd. She turns without waiting. He stands still, hands by his sides, mouth opening too late. The bowl remains untouched. No one dares drink from it now. A woman behind you whispers. It's the silence that ruins the foam. It senses dishonesty like heat senses a cracked pot. You believe it. You believe everything here, because this isn't superstition. It's a social science wrapped in ritual. A public truth serum delivered in barley and tension. Next up is a pair of older lovers graying, wide-hipped with the kind of tired affection that tastes like salted bread and routine. Their question is gentler. Do we still have enough? She asks. He nods. They pour. Wait. The foam lingers, thick, centered, slow to settle. She laughs. He weeps. The crowd claps softly. Not celebration, not pity. Just respect that you sit down. Outside the circle, observing bowl after bowl become a barometer of trust, a medium for feelings people can't quite say aloud. Historians still argue whether the foam test was ever official, or just performative bonding passed down like a folk story, with rules that changed depending on how guilty you felt. Some say it was only practiced in rural households. Others believe it had deep legal roots used in disputes over infidelity, legitimacy, or even brewing rights. You watch as two sisters enter the circle, both holding opposite ends of the same woven mat. They pour their bowl in silence. One asks, "Can I forgive?" "You?" The other flinches. The foam curls toward the left, then evens out, then holds. They don't speak again. They just fold the mat and walk away together. Someone nudges you. You trying it? You almost laugh, then realize you're already standing. The circle waits. The bowl is offered. You don't have a partner, but the rules don't forbid. Solo tests. You pour. Watch, wait. What are you afraid to admit? Someone asks from the crowd. You don't look to see who. You answer anyway. That I never stopped tasting someone who no longer drinks me. The foam trembles, holds, then slowly breaks into a spiral. There's no verdict, just interpretation. The audience offers nothing. No gasps, no judgment. Just shared breath. A man steps forward next. His arms are covered in brewing tattoos, spirals, grain stalks, flame lines. He looks like someone who's passed every test and still doesn't believe the results. His partner joins him, hands shaking. She's holding a bowl marked with twin fish. She asks, "Did you only choose me because she left?" He says nothing. The bowl is already pouring. The foam forms a single solid column, rises unnaturally high, then collapses inward like a dying star. No one speaks. She takes his hand. They walk out without saying a word, but not holding each other anymore. Another ritual begins beside the circle. A group of women gather with leftover foam, scooping it into their hands and tracing symbols on each other's arms. "These are the marks of who we've survived," one says. "The ones who lied. The ones we outgrew. The ones who drank but didn't stay." You ask if they believe the foam tells the future. One answers, "It doesn't predict, it remembers." And that's enough. As the sun starts to dip, the final couple steps in. Two men, one older, one younger. Their question is simple. Will we be allowed? There's no context, no elaboration. Just the bowl, the pour, the foam rising gently, hovering perfectly still, as if time itself is watching. The crowd sighs in relief. One of the women from earlier nods. It said yes. You stay long after the circle empties. Watch the sand smooth itself again. Someone erases the ring with a brush of their foot. The day's truths dissolve into dusk, and somewhere behind you, in the distance, someone begins to hum the melody of that bard song again. Soft, low, the one about foam and forgetting. You wonder now if forgetting is even possible, or if all we ever do is sip slowly, hope for balance, and wait for the bubbles to reveal what we already knew. It doesn't start with drums or chants this time. It starts with the clink of clay against stone, the soft swish of water, and a sigh so long and deep It feels like it's been exhaled by the whole village at once. You find yourself drawn toward a smaller circle, quieter than the others, tucked behind a wall where vines curl like sleepy fingers and shadows move slower. This is not where people fall in love. This is where they recover from it. The couples here aren't dancing, flirting, or testing truths in foam. They're brewing, together, side by side, sometimes without speaking, sometimes humming old lullabies that don't rhyme anymore. Their bowls don't glitter, their jugs don't steam. But what they're making might be more sacred than any seduction you've seen. This is aftercare. The ritual of brewing together, not as an act of courtship or court decision, but as repair, as emotional housekeeping, as a shared labor meant to say, we're still here, still pouring, still choosing not to walk away just yet. A woman with a lined face and inked fingers crushes ginger root with calm, practiced pressure. Her husband stirs in silence, one hand on the pot, the other occasionally brushing hers without needing to be noticed. They've been through something. You can tell, not from the way they look at each other, but from the way they look at the beer. Like it knows things about them they'd rather not repeat, but still, they show up. Still, they brew. You sit with a young couple just starting there. First post-argument batch. He's over-mixing. She's underheating. They bicker softly about proportions. You're using too much mint, she hisses. You always say that when you're not ready to forgive me. He pauses. I use mint when I need to remember. How to like your voice again. She says nothing. But she lowers the flame. This isn't performative. It's maintenance. It's the messy middle where passion cools into practice and love stops being a song and becomes a schedule. And here, in this space, the beer becomes a mirror. Brew it too bitter, and someone's still holding a grudge. Brew it too sweet, and someone's trying too hard. Brew it flat, and you're not ready. But when you get it right, it's not about perfection. It's about harmony. A flavor that doesn't startle, doesn't hide, just works. Like a hand that finds yours after the fight. Not during. After you ask an older woman why this circle exists. Why this particular ritual is so quiet. So hidden. She smiles, slow and wide, and says, because healing isn't sexy. But it's sacred. She hands you a sip of her batch soft, floral, mellow, with a touch of sour at the back. That's the part we still haven't forgiven, she says. But we're working on it. Historians still argue whether this kind of post-romantic brewing existed officially in Nubian society, or if it was simply a private practice passed between long-married lovers. Some believe it was encoded into wedding traditions, the final step in a three-part ritual. Brew to woo, brew to wed, brew to mend. Others think it was subversive, an act of emotional rebellion in a culture that celebrated flirtation more than reconciliation. But no matter where the truth lies, here you see it alive, real, vital. You watch one couple brew after a public falling out. He embarrassed her during a truth test. Laughed when she cried. Everyone saw. Now he's peeling hibiscus petals one by one, adding them slowly, whispering not apologies but explanations. She listens, doesn't nod, but doesn't leave either. Their beer smells sharp, tart, a little reckless. But they drink it together. No one flinches nearby. A couple that's been together longer than the temple wall's been standing sit thigh to thigh, not touching, not speaking. Their brew simmers low. She adds basil. He adds salt. You ask what they're making. Memory. Beer, the man says. For when we forget why we liked each other. You ask if it works. He shrugs. It reminds us what it used to taste like. Sometimes that's enough. Another woman, alone, stirs a pot slowly with one hand, her eyes distant. You assume she's widowed. But then a man steps forward, holding a bowl, his eyes rimmed in pink. I'm not ready, he says. She pauses. Me neither. But she hands him a ladle. He stirs once. They don't speak again. You realize this brew isn't about staying together. It's about staying civil, staying soft. Even if it's over, someone sets a timer using a reed and a dripping pot. The brew must sit, settle, like emotions do. A child walks around offering samples of different aftercare batches, each labeled, learning to apologize, forgiveness with conditions, trying again but slowly, letting go without bitterness. You sip trying again but slowly. It's surprisingly warm, faintly bitter, leaves your lips, tingling, like someone almost kissed you but thought better of it. And then, just before dusk, the final batch is poured. Not by a couple, but by a group. 5 women, 3 men, all sitting in a circle. Some have brewed together before. Others haven't, but they stir anyway, in silence, then laughter, then teasing, then tears. They're brewing not for romance, but for friendship that survived romance, the rarest kind, the hardest kind. They call it the gentle brew. No one asks what's in it. Everyone knows. It's what's left after everything else burns. As the sun drops low and the night reclaims the sand, the couples begin to drift away, bowls in hand. Some holding hands, some walking apart, some not speaking, but sipping. You stay, breathing, in the warm residue of barley and boundaries. You've watched love erupt, collapse, scream, whisper. But this quiet continuation is the most human thing you've seen yet. Because in Nubia, love isn't just declared. It's brewed, rebrewed, again and again, until it settles, until it stops boiling, until it's drinkable. Even if it never tastes quite like it did the first time. It begins without warning. No drum, no chant, no whispered invitation. Just a hush, thick and sudden, like the air itself has agreed to stop breathing. You feel it before you understand. At every conversation in the village dips into silence. Every laugh stutters. Every pot halts mid-stir. Even the fire crackles slower. Then, from somewhere you can't see, the scent arrives. Warm barley, aged fig, and something faintly metallic. A smell so old, it doesn't just touch your nose, it touches your memory. This is it, the final brew. It's only made once a year. Only at the end of the festival. Only by the elders. And only poured after everything else has been said, done, broken, or forgiven. They call it the last sip, though no one drinks it immediately. First, you watch. You gather. You remember. The bowl is huge, more cauldron than cup, carried by 4 elders, each one barefoot, their feet dusted with herbs. They move slow, reverent, as though the liquid inside isn't beer, but time itself, thick and full of all the words no one dared say out loud. They place it at the village center, in the heart of the main circle, and step back. No speech. No blessing, just presence. This is not a toast. It is a reckoning. Around the circle, people begin to gather, those who flirted, fought, forgave, fled. Couples who paired, others who tried, even those who stayed alone. Everyone comes, everyone watches. This brew is not about love or lust or longing. It's about closure. And no one escapes that. A young man steps forward. He kneels, not for ceremony, for steadiness. You can see it in the way his hands tremble as he lifts the ladle. He pours one sip into a smaller bowl and hands it to a girl. No, a woman. Now you saw him reject 3 nights ago in front of half the village. She takes it, looks at him, sips, then nods once. Not in forgiveness, not in reunion, just understanding. The first sip, they say, is for the wound. A pair of co-wives drink next. They don't speak, they don't smile, but they link arms as they swallow, their fingers curled like barley stalks against each other's skin. The second sip is for survival. A mother who lost a child months ago stands in the center, alone. She drinks without flinching, then places her bowl beside the main pot and walks away. The third sip is for remembrance. You ask if anyone can drink. An elder near you nods. Only if you've poured something of yourself into this week. If not, the brew will taste like ash. You ask how you'll know. She just says, you'll know. One by one, the people step forward. Some gulp, some barely wet their lips. Some take a mouthful and let it sit. The taste is different for everyone. For some, it's closure. For others, clarity. For a few, confession. And for a rare handful, it's joy. Not the light kind, the deep kind. The kind that doesn't shout but hums in your blood like a slow song. A man kneels beside his ex-lover. He pours for her. She drinks. He drinks. They don't touch. Don't nod. But something between them still glows. Not love. Not regret. Something older. They call that sip the one for echoes. You finally approach. Bowl in hand. Heart racing like it's the first night again. The ladle dips. The foam stirs. You pour. Sip. It's warm, spicy, faintly bitter at the end. It tastes like every name you wanted to call someone but didn't. Every silence you hoped someone would break. It tastes like release. Like the shape of a goodbye done right. As the last bowls are filled, the elders gather again. Each drinks. Not in celebration, but in confirmation. Then, as the sun begins to rise, the lead elder walks to the fire and pours the final ladleful into the flames. The hiss is soft, almost gentle. And just like that, the ritual ends. No applause. No songs. Just the rustle of feet returning home. Bowls emptied. Arms slack. Hearts, not whole maybe, but intact. You sit alone for a moment longer. Watch the smoke curl upward. Watch the last of the beer stain the sand. You think about everything this journey held, every secret steeped in barley, every confession stirred in foam, every truth brewed with trembling hands. You think about love not as a feeling but a process. Messy, unfiltered, fermented in time, flavored by failure, made stronger by the parts that didn't quite dissolve. You rise. Walk back through the sleeping village. Past the silent pots, past the smudged cymbals, past the fading scent of clove and hope. The festival is over, but you know it never really ends. Because somewhere, someone is already preparing the next batch. Somewhere, someone is writing a new recipe. Somewhere, someone is sipping a truth they didn't know they'd ever be ready to taste. And you're no longer just a guest in the story. You're part of the brew now. And now, as the fires dim and the laughter fades into embers, you lie there, eyes half-lidded, heart not racing, but pulsing slow and steady like the drumbeat of some ancient god's memory. The sand beneath you feels softer, the air cooler. You taste the night on your lips, sweet barley, a hint of citrus, a trace of something sad but beautiful. That was a long journey, wasn't it? You saw more than you expected, maybe more than you were ready for. You walked through ritual and rebellion, through heartbreak and healing, through silence and song. And at every turn, someone offered you a bowl, not to drink, but to understand, and you did. You really did. Let it settle now. Let the story sink into the soft corners of your chest. Not all of them need answers. Not every taste needs a name. Let the lovers be. Let the phone still. Let the words fade into the quiet hum of the night, like fireflies blinking themselves into dreams. You're safe here. You're full, not with food or beer or even emotion, but with knowing, with witnessing, with the slow, soft certainty that even the most fleeting rituals leave traces behind, in breath, in bones, in sleep. So, let your body melt into the bed. Let the noise of the world stay far away. The story is done. The night is kind, and you, dear listener, have made it. End of script. Sweet dreams.